don't know that I'd be any good at this. But how would it be if I kept a few things with you?
I had a farm in Africa at the foot of the Ngong Hills, and somehow that one line, delivered in a Danish accent by a woman from New Jersey, became one of the most imitated, parodied, and quietly beloved opening lines in cinema history. You know the impression? Everyone's tried it at least once. Directed by Pollack and released by Universal Pictures in 1985, Out of Africa follows the true story of Bror Blixen, a Danish baroness who ships herself to colonial Kenya, plants coffee on land that isn't suited for it, and stays married to a man who isn't suited for her. Meryl Streep plays Karen with the kind of discipline that makes you forget she's acting.
Well, my luggage is still on the train.
Room D, Farah. Head of the stairs. I haven't done anything about a ring. Do you care?
Did you think I wouldn't come?
Robert Redford plays Denys Finch Hatton, the free-spirited hunter who refuses to be owned by anyone, including her. Klaus Maria Brandauer plays the husband, Bror, charming enough that you understand the marriage, rotten enough that you remember why it failed. 7 Academy Awards, Best Picture. Critics called it stately and overlong. Audiences made it a $227 million hit on a $31 million budget. Nobody agreed on whether it was a masterpiece or a very expensive travel documentary. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts about Out of Africa. Stay for number 1, because the line Robert Redford quietly recites while washing Meryl Streep's hair in that river is carved on the real man's gravestone in the Ngong Hills. And nobody in the film tells you that. Hit that like button and subscribe before we dive in. It genuinely helps the channel. Let's get into it with number 15. Number 15. The villain of the film was actually a legend. The movie gives us Bror Blixen as a flat-out cad. He cheats. He spends Karen's money. He gives her a disease and disappears on safari while she runs the farm alone. Klaus Maria Brandauer plays him with exactly the charming but rotten energy the script requires. You spend 2.5 hours mildly despising him. Here's the problem. The real Bror Blixen was one of the most celebrated figures in the history of African hunting. Ernest Hemingway called him the Baron and said he was not a man that you forget. Hemingway thought he was extraordinary enough to base the great white hunter in The Short Happy Life of Francis Macumber directly on him. Not a loose inspiration, a portrait. Clients who hunted with Bror described him as an almost lyrical narrator of the bush, a man with a gift for making nature feel alive that they never experienced with anyone else before or since. He was regarded as one of the 2 or 3 greatest professional hunters in all of Africa. His partner on some expeditions was Philip Percival, who is widely considered the best safari guide of that era, which tells you what company Bror was keeping. And yes, he was a relentless womanizer who absolutely did give Karen syphilis and spend her family's money on adventures. Both things were true at once. The film needed a villain. It took a legendary, complicated, endlessly fascinating real man.
This is your cook. Name's Eza.
Esa?
And turned him into a cardboard cad so the romance would have somewhere to point. Hemingway thought Bror was worth a short story. Hollywood decided he was worth 2 hours of contempt. Number 14. Meryl Streep was told she wasn't sexy enough, so she fixed that. Pollack didn't want Meryl Streep. Let that land for a moment. The woman who was already a 2-time Oscar winner in 1984, who had just finished Sophie's Choice, was told through her agent that the director didn't consider her sexy enough to play Bror Blixen. Now, a different actress might have accepted that and moved on. Streep wrangled a meeting through sheer persistence, walked in to make her case, and showed up wearing a low-cut blouse with a push-up bra. Her words. She told the story on The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien in 2009, describing the outfit as one of those dreadful frilly blouses and admitting she was very ashamed to say she wore it. Then added, "It worked." That's the really sad part. What makes the story even better? Pollack later denied the cleavage was the deciding factor, crediting her talent instead. Streep's response to that, effectively, was, "Sure."
Tell Chief Kinanjui that reading is a valuable thing. His children will remember him.
I'm sure it was because of my Danish accent and my intelligence and my ability to portray a writer, she said. But it also probably had something to do with the cleavage. That's 2 Academy Award winners arguing about whether a push-up bra changed film history. Neither of them is wrong. Number 13, the shampoo scene, was a crush, 2 hippos, and a hair coach. The hair washing scene is considered one of the most intimate moments in cinema history. Robert Redford kneels by an African river and washes Meryl Streep's hair while reciting Coleridge. It's tender, it's romantic. It moves people deeply even now, 4 decades later. Here is what was actually happening during filming. A group of hippopotamus were stationed directly upstream. The production had warned both actors that the hippopotamus kills more people in Africa than any other animal, specifically when you come between it and the water. They were filming between a herd of hippos and the water, and Redford couldn't wash hair. He was nervous, he was distracted, and what he was doing to Streep's scalp was, in her words, not good. He was essentially kneading it like bread dough. Her longtime hair and makeup artist Roy Helland had to pull Redford aside and give him a private tutorial on how to actually wash someone's hair gently. Redford took the lesson.
Who loveth well, both man and bird and beast.
By take 5, Streep later said at Cannes in 2024, she was so in love she didn't want the scene to end, even in spite of the hippos. She had also already told a 1985 interviewer that she'd developed a huge crush on him during filming, which made the love story considerably easier to perform. He was, she said, an unusually good listener for a man, so what looks like pure cinematic magic on screen was actually a nervous movie star, an emergency shampoo lesson, and a herd of the most dangerous animals in Africa, somewhere upstream. Number 12, Robert Redford. Had a British accent. They made him erase every single take. Denys Finch Hatton was a real person. He attended Eton. He attended Oxford. His father was the 13th Earl of Winchilsea. He was about as British as a person can actually be. Robert Redford knew this. He prepared a British accent for the role. He filmed scenes using it. And then Sidney Pollack ordered him to go back and overdub every single one of those scenes in his normal California voice, because he decided the accent would pull audiences out of the film. The result is one of cinema's great open ironies. There is Meryl Streep spending months mastering Bror Blixen's specific Danish vocal patterns from actual audio recordings of the real woman. And standing next to her is Robert Redford, playing an Oxford-educated English aristocrat, sounding exactly like the Sundance Kid. Critics noticed. Reviewers pointed out that some of Finch Hatton's lines don't fully make sense unless spoken by a British colonialist. One reviewer dryly observed that it was hard to justify asking Streep to work that hard on a Danish accent, while Redford couldn't be asked to manage British. Pollack's logic was that audiences would accept Redford's American voice more easily than they'd accept Redford attempting British. He may well have been right about that. It still sounds completely obviously wrong. Finch Hatton was British. The film's version of him is not. The director made that call deliberately, erased the evidence, and somehow the movie won Best Picture anyway. Number 11, The Lion Was Not Tethered. Meryl Streep's fear is completely real. In one of the film's most gripping scenes, Bror Blixen drives off a lion attacking her camp with a whip, alone, at night, by firelight. Meryl Streep was specifically assured before shooting that the lion would be restrained by a tether on its back leg, so it could not advance beyond a safe distance. The tether was not there when the camera rolled. The animal advanced. It got significantly closer to Streep than anyone had planned. Sidney Pollack, watching from a distance, froze. He was so alarmed he couldn't call cut. The trainers rushed in to control the animal. The take ended. The fear on Meryl Streep's face in that scene is not acting. You can watch it now with this knowledge and see it differently. That's a woman processing genuine danger in real time while the camera kept rolling. The production had already gone to elaborate lengths with the animals. Because Kenyan law prohibits the use of wild, untrained animals in film productions, the team flew in a pride of trained lions from an animal park in Southern California. These were experienced film animals. They had worked on sets before. The head trainer had extensive relationships with each of them, and one of them, on one specific take, did whatever it wanted anyway. That's the thing about using real animals in real wilderness. At a certain point, you have done everything you can, and then you are just hoping. Pollack was hoping. Streep was alone with the lion. Number 10, the most famous score in the film, almost never existed. John Barry's music for Out of Africa is regarded as one of the greatest film scores ever composed. The American Film Institute ranked it in the top 20 of all time. It won the Academy Award. It is the emotional spine of the entire movie. Without it, the film is a different, smaller experience. Sidney Pollack did not want it. Pollack had edited the film with indigenous African music as his working score, lived with that version through all of post-production, and considered it the film he was making. When Barry came in and saw the cut, he pushed back. The film was about two people, he argued, not a continent. The music should follow them. Pollack hesitantly agreed to try it. Barry wrote what became one of the most enduring love themes in cinema. A skeptical director got a better film, and that main theme became so completely associated with romantic longing and open spaces that it was used in perfume commercials, at state funerals, and in dozens of films for decades afterward. There's an extra layer here. Pollack had scored his previous 6 films with composer Dave Grusin and worked with him again later. Barry was not the instinctive choice, and indigenous African music was not Barry's approach. Both men arrived at this film through disagreement. Both left with Oscars. And the score that almost wasn't is the element nobody has ever forgotten. Number 9, the film erased a real person while she was still alive to watch. The movie presents a tidy love triangle, Karen, Denys, and a fictional young woman named Felicity, who fumbles through a conversation about men and serves mostly to make Karen jealous. Sweet enough character, completely invented. Felicity is based on Beryl Markham. The film couldn't use her real name because she was still alive when the movie was shot, and the production didn't have the rights to her story. Beryl Markham was one of the most remarkable people of the 20th century. In 1936, she became the first person, not the first woman, the first human being, to fly solo non-stop across the Atlantic Ocean from east to west, against the prevailing winds. That's the harder direction. Nobody had done it before. She was also a memoirist. Her book West with the Night was so celebrated that Ernest Hemingway privately called it bloody wonderful. She was deeply entangled with both Blixen and Finch Hatton. Some historians believe his relationship with Markham was ongoing at the time of his death, and that the fatal flight from Voy may have involved plans connected to her. Markham died in 1986, 1 year after the film came out. She lived to watch herself replaced by a clumsy fictional girl asking for romantic advice, while the film she was quietly erased from won 7 Academy Awards. She flew the Atlantic alone, east to west, into headwinds. Hollywood turned her into a footnote in someone else's love story, and she was still alive to see it. Number 8. Karen Blixen's real life was so dark the film is actually the cheerful version. The film handles her illness with discretion. Karen contracts a disease from Bror, travels to Denmark for treatment, and returns. A plot point. A complication in an already difficult marriage. The movie moves on. In reality, Bror gave Karen syphilis within the first year of their marriage, and the treatments available in 1915, mercury and arsenic, were brutal and permanently damaging. She spent the rest of her life with chronic, intense abdominal pain that her doctors struggled to explain and could never fully treat. By 1945, she had spinal nerves surgically severed to try to manage it. The operation didn't help. The symptoms came back. In her final years, she could eat almost nothing. She survived largely on oysters, grapes, and champagne. When she died in 1962, her official cause of death was recorded as emaciation. She weighed less than 80 pounds, and she had written Out of Africa, the book the film is based on, between all of this. Published in 1937, when she was 52 years old, her literary debut. Written by a woman who had lost her farm, her lover, her health, and 17 years of her life in a country she could never go back to. That book made her famous in 15 countries. The woman who survived all of that went home to Denmark with nothing and became one of the most celebrated writers of the century. Number 7. The Nobel Committee passed on her twice. Hemingway said it was a mistake. Karen Blixen was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Literature twice, in 1954 and again in 1957. She didn't win either time. In 1954, the prize went to Hemingway, who told the press that Isak Dinesen was more deserving than he was, but he could use the money. That's not a paraphrase. That's what he said. In 1957, it went to Albert Camus. In 1961, the year before she died, she reportedly finished third. Peter Englund, the permanent secretary of the Swedish Academy, later called it a mistake that she never won. From the body that actually awards the Nobel Prize, That is a remarkable thing to admit. The reason she kept being passed over, according to Danish accounts, had nothing to do with her work. The Swedish Academy was anxious about appearing to favor Scandinavian writers. A Danish woman writing in English was the wrong kind of Scandinavian at the wrong moment. She died in September 1962. The Nobel Prize is not awarded posthumously. Hemingway won his in 1954. He spent his life hunting, fishing, and performing toughness for the camera. When the Nobel came his way, he looked across the room at a woman who had survived a devastating illness, a failed marriage, 17 years alone on a coffee farm, and the death of the man she loved, and said publicly she should have had it instead. He was right. Number 6, Streep said, "The shampoo scene was more intimate than any love scene she'd filmed." Here is something that never made the press notes. Meryl Streep described Robert Redford as the best kisser she ever met in the movies. And in 2024, at the Cannes Film Festival, 40 years after the film came out, she stood in front of an audience at the Théâtre Debussy and said the hair-washing scene was the most intimate she had ever filmed. More intimate, she said, than scenes that usually get a different kind of rating. Because what audiences almost never get to see is that quality of careful, unhurried attention. The crowd gave her a standing ovation. What made that chemistry possible also caused a production problem. In the 2019 book Queen Meryl, Redford described what happened between takes. They talked, they laughed, they had a sense of humor in common, and it bothered Pollack. According to Redford, the director kept physically breaking them up, not because anything was wrong, but because the easy connection between them didn't match the dynamic Pollack had in his head for how the two characters should relate. So, the director kept interrupting the two people whose chemistry he needed to be convincing. The chemistry survived anyway. 40 years later, Streep was still calling it the most intimate scene of her career. Pollack broke them up between takes. The audience felt what was between them anyway. Turns out some things can't be directed out of people. Number 5, Meryl Streep studied recordings of a dead woman to get 3 words right. The opening line of Out of Africa has been imitated and parodied so many times, it has a cultural life entirely separate from the film. You've heard the impression even if you've only watched it once. What most people don't know is how Streep built that accent. She tracked down actual audio recordings of Bror Blixen, the real woman, in her own voice, and listened obsessively. Streep wasn't approximating a general national sound. She was trying to replicate one specific person's voice, shaped by a Danish childhood, 17 years in British colonial Kenya, and a lifetime writing in 2 languages simultaneously. And then Pollack asked her to tone it down. He thought Blixen's real vocal patterns were too distinctive, too aristocratic, and would alienate American audiences. So, Streep had to find a middle position, authentic enough to honor the real woman, moderated enough to keep the director satisfied. She held that position for 6 months of filming in African heat. Here's the irony Pollack didn't see coming. He feared the accent would push away American audiences. It didn't. What happened instead? A Danish commentator wrote to a newspaper calling out specific errors that no native speaker would ever make. The accent Pollack toned down for American ears was simultaneously too inaccurate for Danish ones. Streep landed in a middle ground that satisfied neither worry. She wasn't nominated for Best Actress. She had already won twice. The Academy decided she could wait. She did. 3rd Oscar arrived in 2012 for The Iron Lady. The Academy got there. Number 4. The Oscar night was a scandal. Spielberg got shut out. The NAACP responded. On December 18, 1985, 2 films opened on the exact same day. Out of Africa and The Color Purple, Steven Spielberg's adaptation of Alice Walker's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. Both received 11 Academy Award nominations. One won 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. The other won 0. The Color Purple went 0 for 11, matching the record for most nominations without a single win. Spielberg won the Directors Guild of America Award for Best Director that year and wasn't even nominated for the Oscar. The Academy bypassed him entirely. Roger Ebert called The Color Purple the best film of 1985. He later wrote that Out of Africa likely connected with Academy voters because it felt like a reminder of an earlier, simpler time, when stately epics were cast with major stars and cloaked in literary respectability. That is a diplomatic observation. The Hollywood Beverly Hills chapter of the NAACP accused the Academy of deliberately excluding black-led projects from major awards. The Academy denied it. Spielberg stood in front of cameras afterward and said, "We were pitched a no-hitter, but the crowd still loves us." His smile, reports noted at the time, did not reach his eyes. Out of Africa won Best Picture. 40 years later, that night is still debated, still discussed, and occasionally still used as Exhibit A in conversations about whose stories the Academy chooses to honor. The film that beat The Color Purple carries that history now, whether it asked for it or not. Number 3, the real biplane, was the same model that killed the real Denys. The aerial sequences in Out of Africa are still regarded as some of the most beautiful ever filmed, sweeping over the Masai Mara, banking above the Great Rift Valley, gliding through a formation of flamingos lifting from a lake in a single pink cloud. The shots are genuinely breathtaking 40 years later. Here is the detail that makes them something else entirely. The production shipped a 1929 model de Havilland Gypsy Moth biplane to Kenya in the back of a Douglas DC-8 cargo aircraft, specifically for filming. The pilot was Wing Commander Sir Henry Dalrymple White, a decorated RAF veteran living in Kenya, who flew the actual aircraft over the actual landscape. The real Denys Finch Hatton flew a Gypsy Moth, the same manufacturer, the same model, the same era. On the morning of May 14, 1931, Finch Hatton's Gypsy Moth took off from the airstrip at Voi, circled twice, and fell from the sky in flames. He was 44 years old. His Kikuyu co-pilot died with him. The film recreated Finch Hatton's flights using the same type of aircraft that crashed in 1931, flown over the same landscape, at the same altitude, in the same African light. The production never made a point of this in any press material. It's possible nobody involved fully registered the symmetry, but watch those aerial sequences again with this knowledge and see whether they feel different. The yellow biplane soaring over those plains is beautiful, and it's also, quietly, an accidental memorial. Number 2, she married the wrong twin, on purpose. The film introduces Karen Blixen as a woman who makes a practical if joyless arrangement. She marries Bror Blixen for the title of Baroness and a chance at Africa. That's true. What the film skips is the specific reason the marriage happened the way it did. Karen didn't marry Bror because he was practical. She married him because she had been in love with his brother. Hans von Blixen-Finecke was Karen's second cousin, and the man she actually wanted. He turned her down. Here's the detail the film doesn't tell you. Hans was an Olympic bronze medalist. He won his medal in equestrian dressage at the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. Karen Blixen fell in love with a decorated Olympic athlete, was rejected, and responded by proposing to his identical twin. She was not running toward Bror. She was running away from Hans and away from the life in Denmark that now had nowhere left to go. Her father, Wilhelm, had died when she was 10 years old, after learning he had fathered a child with a woman during years spent living among the Chippewa in Wisconsin. Karen had grown up with an understanding that the people she loved most were capable of simply leaving, first her father, then the man she wanted, then, eventually, Bror in the way that Bror left people, then Denys in the only way that couldn't be argued with. The film gives you a story of love found and lost in Africa. The actual story starts with a woman who had already lost before she got on the boat. Number 1, the line Redford recites in the most romantic scene is carved on the real man's gravestone. This is the one that changes how you watch the film. You know the hair-washing scene, Redford kneeling by the river, water running through Streep's hair, the whole sequence so quiet and tender that people still talk about it 40 years later. While he washes her hair, he recites a few lines of poetry. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the rhyme of the ancient mariner. One line in particular, "He prayeth well, who loveth well both man and bird and beast." That line is inscribed on Denys Finch Hatton's real gravestone, not as a tribute added later, not a coincidence. The real Denys Finch Hatton loved that poem, deeply, personally. When he died in the plane crash in 1931, his brother Toby traveled to the Ngong Hills and erected a stone obelisk at his grave. On it, he placed a brass plaque with that exact line from the rhyme of the ancient mariner. It is still there. You can visit it today. Screenwriter Kurt Luedke knew this. He put it in the script deliberately, the poem Finch Hatton loved in life, spoken by the man playing him on screen in the most intimate scene in the film to the woman who buried him. The audience watching Redford wash Streep's hair has always been watching a man read his own epitaph to the woman who chose where he would be buried. So, there you have it. 15 facts about a film that has always looked like effortless, sunlit grandeur, and turns out to have been built on real danger, real heartbreak, real injustice, and genuine feeling at almost every level. Which facts surprised you? Let us know in the comments below. And hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Until next time.